I had just pulled into the driveway of my lake cabin after 2 long weeks out on the water, and before the dust had even settled around my truck, I saw flashing lights bouncing off the pine trees. 2 cruisers came barreling in like they were chasing down a bank robber, tires chewing up the gravel, and I hadn't even taken the keys out of the ignition yet. My stomach sank. There's nothing like police showing up uninvited to make your skin crawl. And then I saw her standing right at the edge of my property with that smug little tilt to her chin. Sylvia, the HOA president, phone still warm in her hand, like she'd just hung up from calling in the cavalry. She had 3 of her board members clustered behind her, like they were whispering jurors at some small-town trial. And the second the cruisers stopped, she jabbed her finger toward me and barked, "That's him, officer! He broke into that cabin! Get him off this property before he causes trouble!" My jaw dropped. Remove me from my own cabin. You'd think I was hearing things. The younger cop looked uncertain, but still started walking my way, hand resting on his belt, while the neighbors trickled out with coffee mugs, like they were watching a TV drama play out live. And then just as Sylvia puffed up her chest, like she'd already won another SUV, rolled in slow. Out stepped the police chief himself, only he wasn't just any chief. That was my cousin Daniel. He wore his sunglasses low, that calm swagger of a man who'd seen 1,000 real emergencies, and Sylvia had no idea who she'd just dragged into her little show. She stormed toward him with her arms waving ready to unload, but when his eyes landed on me standing by my truck, there was this flicker of recognition that changed everything. And right there, before anyone else realized what was happening, her confidence started to leak out like air from a busted tire. Now, to understand how it came to this circus, you've got to roll back a couple months. I'd bought that cabin after retiring early, just a simple wooden place with a wide porch overlooking the lake. Nothing fancy, just space enough for me and my 2 labs, Hunter and Belle. My plan was fishing, reading, drinking coffee on the porch, and minding my own business. But Sylvia didn't like people minding their own business. She came knocking the day after I moved in, clipboard in hand, not to say welcome, but to start listing off violations: fence color, mailbox, placement, porch light, brightness. I still had my suitcase in hand, and she's telling me my porch light is aggressively non-compliant. I tried being neighborly, even brought cookies once to their HOA meeting, hoping kindness might soften the edges. But kindness is wasted on folks who get high off control. The letters started stacking up, grass a half-inch too tall, Belle barking at a squirrel, Hunter digging one hole visible from the street. $50 fines for nothing. I swallowed it, fixed what I had to paid, what I couldn't argue because life felt too short to spar over grass height. But when I left for my 2-week fishing trip, I had no idea Sylvia was planning to flip the script. I'd told them I'd be gone, even asked my neighbor Greg to keep an eye out. He texted me halfway through, "Sylvia's been snooping, says you abandoned the place. Talking about calling the cops." I laughed it off then. I wasn't laughing when I pulled in and saw her with 2 patrol cars in tow. She marched right up to the officers, waving a folder stuffed with papers like she'd found the holy grail of property law. "It's ours now," she yelled. He abandoned it. One officer asked, "Do you have proof?" She shoved the folder forward. HOA bylaws, citations, fines, none of it ownership. And that's when Daniel, my cousin, finally cut in. Calm as ever, he pulled off his sunglasses and said, "Sylvia, who owns this cabin," she stammered, waved the folder again, muttered about technical abandonment, and he turned to me with the faintest grin. "Ethan Walker, right?" I nodded. "That's my cousin," he told the officers flatly. The silence that fell, you could have heard a leaf drop. The neighbors gasped. One of the officers cracked a smile, and Sylvia's face went red enough to match the stop sign at the corner. But she wasn't done. People like her never are. When Hunter came bounding out to greet me, mud on his paws from the yard, he skidded straight onto her white blazer, leaving 2 perfect paw prints across her chest. Papers flew into the flower bed like confetti. The crowd broke into laughter, and she shrieked like she'd been mauled. Hunter, being Hunter, just dropped his tennis ball at her feet like it was a peace offering. I offered her a towel, even promised to cover dry cleaning, and you'd think that would have been the end. But then the rumble of a tow truck cut through the scene. Orange lights flashing, a driver hopped out, claiming he had an HOA order to impound my truck for violations. My truck was parked in my driveway, not the street, but he was already lowering the lift like he'd done it 100 times. Daniel stepped in hard body cam, rolling, warning him it was private property, and any attempt would be trespassing. The driver muttered about Bryce, the HOA vice president, authorizing it. Every head turned toward Sylvia, but she shook her head, insisting she hadn't signed that order. That's when it became clear Sylvia was a puppet, and Bryce was the one pulling strings. And as if that wasn't enough, a county animal services van pulled up minutes later. Some board member had filed a complaint that Hunter was a dangerous dog. The officer inspected him. Hunter wagged his tail, licked her hand, and she laughed. "This is no threat." Neighbors groaned, realizing the HOA was throwing every dart they could find, hoping one would stick. That night, the HOA held an emergency meeting. The community center was packed shoulder to shoulder. Sylvia tried to spin the morning as a misunderstanding, but I brought the receipts. Emails Bryce had sent about making an example out of me, about jacking fines, until families sold cheap about lining his own company's pockets with flipped properties. Greg backed me up with proof of letters Sylvia had delivered while I was gone, threatening to tow my truck and change the locks. The room erupted, people yelling for a vote. Hands shot up, and in one fell swoop, Bryce was removed from the board. The neighbors cheered, Sylvia sat stone-faced, and I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. I was wrong. Bryce didn't go quietly. 2 days later, a man in a suit handed me a thick envelope on my porch: lawsuit filings, foreclosure petitions, even a restraining order, claiming I threatened him. My cousin Daniel read through the papers and said, "Half of this contradicts county records. The rest is twisted HOA bylaws. It won't stand." Karen, yes, even Sylvia came by, shaken, admitting Bryce had forged signatures and hijacked the board. She was ready to testify against him. The courtroom showdown was something out of a movie. Bryce's lawyer waved photos of my grass being 2 inches high porch lights on too long, Hunter barking at squirrels like it was evidence of a crime. When it was our turn, Daniel dropped county deeds and tax receipts on the judge's bench. Karen admitted Bryce had forged her name on a tow request, and I handed over the emails about pushing families out. The judge leaned back, face like stone, then finally said, "Mr. Dalton, you've wasted this court's time. These filings are vindictive and baseless." He slammed down a restraining order against Bryce. The neighbors who packed the courtroom clapped until the bailiff barked for silence. But Bryce wasn't finished. He sent drones buzzing over my house, smear flyers claiming I was unsafe, even a midnight brick through my window, with a note tied to it: "Leave or regret it." The final straw came when a fire broke out on the edge of my property, accelerant poured in the dirt, and a lighter with Bryce's initials left behind like a calling card. Fire crews barely stopped it before it reached my fence. That was it. Daniel filed charges, the county attorney signed a warrant, and the cruisers rolled in at dusk. Neighbors watched from porches as they cuffed Bryce on his driveway for arson, harassment, and stalking. He screamed, "This isn't over," but when they showed him the lighter bagged as evidence, his jaw clamped shut. The trial moved fast. The judge sentenced him to 2 years in county jail restitution for damages and a 5-year restraining order. When the gavel fell, it was like the whole neighborhood exhaled. For the first time in months, no black SUVs rolled by, no drones hummed overhead. The HOA rewrote its bylaws, community first, rules second. Sylvia humbled, apologized, and promised change. Greg even joined the board to keep things honest. By summer, the lakefront felt alive again. Neighbors waved instead of hiding, kids chalked the street block parties, replaced meetings filled with shouting. Hunter and Belle became mascots for the community, tails wagging as kids tossed them tennis balls by the water. And me, I finally felt like that cabin was a home again instead of a fortress. But I'll tell you this, Bryce's words still echo, this isn't over. Men like him don't disappear. They brood, they plot, they wait for shadows. Maybe he'll come back one day with another scheme, maybe not. But if he does, he'll find a community that's stronger now, one that learned how dangerous it is to let power go unchecked. So here's what I'll leave you with. What do you think? Was justice served, or was 2 years too light for what Bryce pulled? Do you think people like Sylvia deserve forgiveness after letting things spiral? Or should neighbors never trust an HOA president again? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your stories of neighborhood battles, and tell me what you'd have done if you were standing there the day the cops pulled up to your cabin.